Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Sports Talk. I'm Jeff Sylvia.
And I'm Aaron Bolio.
And, of course, after Week 12 in the NFL, the Patriots are still perfect. Some key injuries around the league, and we're going to talk a little bit about Johnny Trainwreck, as I'm so now going to call him. But let's break down the Pats and Bills this week. It was an unbelievable game at Gillette Stadium, a game with more key injuries for the Patriots, and a little bit of Rex Ryan involved in this one.
Yeah, a little bit of Rex Ryan on both sides of the ball, right? You have a little bit of audio for us?
Yeah, let's play a little Rex Ryan.
Let's play a little Rex Ryan.
Rex Ryan!
Yeah, there's no mistake in that. And the funniest thing about that whole thing was watching Tom Brady in the press conference when they're grilling him about the subject. And with a totally straight face, he looks into the camera and he says, "We have a lot of schemes and a lot of things that we planned for, and they could be called anything. Some of them are pretty obscure." And he doesn't even crack a smile. I can't believe the guy is that stone-faced.
That's not even my favorite troll job that they've done like that. My favorite was last year when they did the weird formations against Baltimore that completely screwed them up, and the formations were called Baltimore and Raven.
I was actually at that game. That was the Julian Edelman pass down the sidelines game. Boy, the place went absolutely ape.
Everybody was waiting for that one, but yeah, you know, we can have our little jabs at Rex Ryan every once in a while. This is usually the team that tries to keep its mouth shut, and sometimes it gets a little boring that way, but it's nice to have that every once in a while. But it was definitely a very tight game. The officiating was very questionable on both sides. There was definitely some that really hurt the Patriots, definitely some that really hurt the Bills at the end. And it even got so bad, I guess other coaches are now filing their complaints after watching that game, saying, like, we don't want this to happen to us. There has been no accountability towards officiating.
Can we talk for a second about the inadvertent whistle, ladies and gentlemen? I've been watching football a long, long time, and I cannot remember one game. And we're talking going back to Mercury Morris and Larry Zonka days when Tom Landry was a coach and Roger Staubach was a quarterback and Danny White backed him up. Even back to those days, I have never once seen an inadvertent whistle like that with a play on the move and a potential game-winning touchdown in the difference.
And it's like I've seen before, you know, like the guy they'll rule an incomplete pass instead of a fumble, and they'll blow the whistle, or like they'll think the guy was down, they'll blow the whistle even though he wasn't. You know, there's that, and then there's an inadvertent whistle, which I've never seen before. And I think what triggered it was you saw Rex Ryan walking onto the chalk
on himself.
And I don't even know what Rex Ryan was complaining about, because I believe it saved him a touchdown. When they showed the bird's eye view, there wasn't a guy within 50 yards of freaking Amendola. Amendola had so much real estate, and he's not Julian Edelman fast, but he's fast enough to take advantage of that.
Fast enough. He was screaming at the ref because he thought Brady was out of bounds, and he actually blocked the view of the ref, of Brady, whether he was in or out of bounds. And as soon as the ref lost sight of the football, because Rex Ryan, who is now 100 pounds less but still getting in everybody's way, Rex Ryan, he had to blow the whistle at that point. To me, that's a huge, huge, huge blunder. It's probably the biggest mistake that a referee can make. And if you're looking at these days how they're all scrutinized, the game's getting long enough as it is between the commercials and the get-togethers. Now, they all want to get it right all the time, and they're under so much scrutiny all the time that, they're like, we're going to take all the time in the world. We'll call New York. And, I mean, what is the solution to this? I don't want to watch, like, a commercial break when a football game breaks out anymore.
Well, I definitely think that they should definitely every week convene with the refs. I don't really know what the procedure is, but there has been a lot of demand from coaches that they suspend refs for a couple days if the calls were that bad or just that egregious. And I think in the case of an invert whistle, that's as bad as it gets for an official. So, but I guess that official in particular had he was injured week 2, I think, because I guess he was in the middle of a collision, and he only came back, I guess, last week. So he was a little bit, I think he was a little bit on edge, and he was a little bit coming back into the game. So I don't know. When you see Rex Ryan coming at you, it's kind of...
I don't know. But, I mean, what can we do to speed up the game? I mean, if you're watching an NFL game now, it's getting tougher and tougher to watch, because it's like I said, you're watching a commercial break and a football game breaks out. It's so stop-start. There's no rhythm to it. And forgive me if I'm reading into this or not, but I think commercials just keep more and more every single week.
There's nothing I can think of, because, I mean, in baseball there's been talks about putting in a pitch clock, but we already have a we already have
A play
a
clock.
play clock. I
What
mean,
we have is too many
what,
commercials.
Make it shorter. I don't know. And the problem is, the only things I can think of is commercial related,
too many.
and they're not going to touch that because that's where the revenue comes from. But I mean, you know what irritates me the most when I'm watching an NFL game, and this has been the case for years. You get the kickoff, and they'll show just the kickoff, and then go right back to commercials again.
Sure.
And then you'll see, 2 plays, call a timeout, and they'll do the freaking commercial again. Then and it's like,
One play and then another
the only
commercial break.
time they show the kickoff and then continue on with the game is the opening kickoff, and then they don't even bother at that
They
point.
suck you in.
They suck you in, and then at that point, every kickoff and every punt immediately after, they'll show just that play and then go back to commercials. It's irritating.
Well, speaking of sucked in, I want to talk a little bit about the Bills' defense and Rex Ryan's scheme. Now, I went out on edge last week, and I actually picked the Bills to win this game. And, a couple of plays, maybe they are. Maybe they are going to win this game. I mean, there were a couple of huge plays that could have turned this game around one way or the other, and they were in it to the end. There isn't a team in the league that's held them to this few points. The offensive line was definitely exposed. I mean, Brady sat on his ass more times than he has collectively all season. And it seemed that with nobody in the down line position in front, Brady was having a hard time trying to figure out who's coming and who's dropping back in coverage.
And here's where the injuries were coming up. And I give a lot of credit to Rex because he does a very good job scheming these kind of blitzes and such. But between the injuries to the offensive line and without Julian Edelman and Dion Lewis to just strike it out to, we were seeing them be exposed. Brady wasn't getting the release he's been getting in a few weeks. The line hasn't been holding back the way they have been. I mean, I guess they are trying to get healthier, but it was like every other play. They were rearranging that line, trying to find something new to work. Eventually, they found James White, and eventually they managed to get Danny Amendola open a few plays, and that was when we finally started seeing the offense going. So I think the Julian Edelman injury is hurting them, but especially the offensive line injury is hurting them right now.
I'm going to go with you on the offensive line, and reason being is they couldn't run the football. I mean, LeGarrette Blount, how many yards did he have in the first half? I mean, he had next to nothing, and he was very ineffective on early downs when they would look to him to try to get some real estate so they can operate in third and short, where they do a very good job. They found themselves all day long in third and long, and at that point they were virtually ineffective. If you look at Brady's stats on third down, it was horrendous. Absolutely horrendous.
With Blunt, he works best when he's in open field, and that's the biggest struggle with him is, if you can get him the hole, he'll get you a lot of yards, but that's the big thing is getting in the hole. So that's why he actually was probably more effective when he bounced to the outside than he was going in. When he went up the middle, he was creamed every time. But when he went on the outside, he would get, maybe a 5-yard game a few times. So that was, I think, my issue with Blunt. And I don't know, with Brady, it was like, they got them in a lot of third and longs. And it was like, once they got to third and long, it was like impossible to manage to get somebody open in time. And they did a hell of a job covering Rob Gronkowski. And it showed just how stagnant the offense can look when Rob Gronkowski is having difficulty.
Sure.
And teams are finding ways to stop him now.
Teams are finding ways to stop him. If you look at the X factor that he was, just last year alone, a healthy Rob Gronkowski, nobody would cover him. They would put him out wide. They'd put him in the slot. They'd move him and spread out everything, and there was nobody that could run with him down the field. But now it seems that they have help coming from somewhere, and they're able to cover him up. So now when you don't have Julian Edelman and you don't have Dion Lewis, your options become very, very limited for Tom Brady, who seemed to be looking around back there, not finding anybody, and throwing a lot of balls into the dirt and scrambling outside to the tackles and avoiding a intentional grounding all day long.
I'll tell you what, and I'll address this later when we start talking about the game next week. But the defense came up when it had to, and I guess I'd have to relook, but I know they're a top 5 scoring defense now, which I think is that's what I hate when you look up the stats and it says the number 1 defense. No, they rank defense and offense by yards, not points, and points are kind of the important thing because they determine who wins. Sure. So
well, they've always been a bend but not break system.
And that's the thing. And they held the Bills to 13 points. There was a lot of question about the one touchdown the Bills got with LaShawn McCoy, but I think it was a touchdown. It looked like a touchdown to me, but. Butler had another great week against Sammy Watkins, who is a very good young receiver. Chung impressed me a lot. Chung has not historically been a really good cover guy, but he made some plays when it counted yesterday. And McCourty stepped it up last week after he had a pretty bad week against the Giants. So there were some good plays, and still, Jamie Collins, we're waiting for him to come back. And once he comes back, this defense is going to be even more solid.
Well, obviously injuries are on both sides of the ball, and defensively, probably not as much as offensively. But one thing I am liking about this defense is they can all tackle. I mean, they all seem to be around the ball, and not a lot of missed tackles in the open field, which is an improvement from last year. Last year, you watched a lot of missed tackles and a lot of yards after the catch. You're not seeing that. Even if a guy is making a play on a back, on a defensive cornerback, they're making the tackle right away, and there's not a lot of yards after the catch.
That's another thing I love about Malcolm Butler. You see so many corners that will basically give up on the play. Like once they're covering their guy, if their guy doesn't have the ball, they don't give a crap.
Right.
And I see so many times when, I think there was a screen pass to LaShawn McCoy. It was, the only forward pass, so Butler didn't have to worry about his guy anymore. And you just saw him go after and nail him. And that's what he does, too. It's not even like he whiffs on it or tries to make it look like he was there. Butler likes tackling people.
Yeah,
people bigger than him.
And the thing, I think, if you were Rex Ryan, just to divert a little bit, what about the block that Tyrod Taylor was trying to throw in a sweep that play?
That was the worst block in NFL history.
I mean, come on, man.
The worst thing I've ever seen.
Come on, man. You're not going to do that in the NFL. He's going to get himself killed.
I mean, he almost did. You see him holding his shoulder at the end of the game, which I think is how
questionable.
That's how I knew the Patriots were going to win towards the end. They had the lead, and you could tell that it was. They kept cutting to E.J. Manuel. And I was like, all right, if they put E.J. Manuel in, I'm already going to write this down as a win. But, even with Taylor out there, as good as I think Taylor is a pretty good young quarterback. I think he shows a lot of promise. But, not a lot of quarterbacks are good when they injure their shoulder, and he did late at a time when they needed him most. He still managed to get some throws, but it was clear he wasn't able to get the deep balls that they needed in that last 2 minutes with no timeouts.
I'll tell you what I like about Tyrod Taylor is his ability to throw on the run. I mean, he makes plays, getting out of the pocket with his legs and sets up down the field and makes shoestring passes, to guys on a frozen rope. There is very few guys in the league that have that ability to be that accurate on a consistent basis. You see him doing that time after time, and, extending the play, especially we watched it this Sunday. He made plenty of plays when he was nailed in the backfield. You thought he was going down for a loss. Next thing you know, he's outside the tackles and he's making throws downfield.
I think this is the first time Rex Ryan has ever had a quarterback that he's even remotely confident in.
That he even liked.
And he's not even like Tyrod is not elite by any means. Don't get me wrong, but when you compare him to Mark Sanchez and Geno Smith, pretty good.
But he's solid. He's solid, and now he looks like he's not going to lose the game for you. He's making good decisions, and his ability to get outside and extend the play like that is going to make him better than most.
However, if you want to talk about bad decisions, the 2-minute drill at the end of the game for Buffalo was horrendous. Horrendous. No timeouts. You need a touchdown to win. This isn't a field goal range. You can spike it. You need to get a touchdown on this play, and you're doing these 5-yard dink and dunks.
Nothing downfield
because,
at all.
I know his arm's hurt, but you could at least go to the sideline a few times, which I did closer to the end, but they lost at least a minute and a half just by the first couple plays because they decided to go middle of the field.
Sure. And, I think with the end of the game, the way it was, there was no clock management. They didn't save that timeout that they burned earlier in the game. That really, really cost them, because that could have got another 45 seconds on that game for them. And next thing you know, they're in a position maybe to put something in the end zone. But I will tell you that I was very, very impressed by the defensive line play of the New England Patriots this week. Not only, not so much against the run, but more in pass rush. For a guy to be contained like him and to make him scramble as much as they did, most guys aren't going to get away like he did. And I like the pass rush more and more every week.
I'm really excited about it just because, we talk about Brady not being here forever, but the young defense is going to be here for much longer than that. And it looks like the league is kind of moving towards that Russell Wilson, Cam Newton sort of quarterback that is a pocket passer by heart, but is not afraid to scramble, not afraid to throw on the run. And it's a lot harder to contain guys like that. It's a lot harder to get sacks on guys like that. And they were doing that against a guy like Tyrod Taylor. So it doesn't just give me hope for this season, but it gives me hope for the future of this team.
All right, I'm going to go all Stephen A. Smith on your ass for a second. You cannot say Cam Newton and Russell Wilson in the same sentence. I'm sorry. You cannot do that. They are two different players. They're on two different planes, and I'm sorry, they don't belong together in the same paragraph. All right, rant over. There's some injuries that we need to talk about, starting with the Patriots, and again, another big win, but potentially another big injury. Danny Amendola, who's been stepping up all year long. We've been talking about him since week one as far as being the X factor. When you're covering up Edelman and you're covering up, Dion Lewis and you're covering up Gronkowski, who's the guy left and who's been making plays all year? Danny Amendola. And who goes down this week? Danny Amendola.
3 weeks ago, I wouldn't have been as nervous, but without Edelman, that's even bigger. And I was actually watching my phone all day yesterday. I was like, when's the MRI coming back? When's it coming back? So he's week to week, which is really, really good news. And he's probably not going to play this weekend, but I think even better news is they said that there's a chance he could play, which I don't believe he's going to play this weekend, but that does show that he's going to be ready to come back very soon, which they need him to come back at this point in time. But they're going to be playing a very good Denver defense. Basically, Amendola's job has been to buy time for Edelman to come back in
that slot position.
Yep. But
and he did a really good job this week. I mean, he caught everything that was thrown to him, and he was able to get over the middle, make the play, get first downs, and then get down on the ground before he got killed.
And I will say, last week, James White managed to make he got the 2 touchdowns, and to compare him to Dion Lewis would be
not quite,
but
that'd be like comparing Russell Wilson and Cam Newton.
Russell Wilson has a ring. Cam Newton doesn't. I'm just saying.
I'm just talking about the way they're playing.
I'm just saying.
I'm just talking about the way they're playing.
Okay. Russell Wilson has a ring, and he's been to a second Super Bowl. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Anyway, off topic here. Anyway, I've been waiting for James White to make that kind of, it wasn't superstar level, but, I want him to be improving over time because we're going to need him to be. If he's not on Dion Lewis's level, he's going to need to be somewhat there by the playoffs, and especially this weekend without Danny Amendola, they need to have that against a very, very good Denver defense.
Well, what I saw out of the backfield, the most explosive back I saw, even though he got just a few plays, was Bolden. I mean, he was very explosive through the line of scrimmage, and he was able to pick up, yards past the line of scrimmage and get some decent runs. Why they didn't use him more, I don't know, but he was a hell of a lot more effective, on the run than Blount was.
And the good news is, also from the Danny Amendola injury front, was Harper had a pretty decent game, the rookie. I was glad to see, he was the August hero with Jimmy Garoppolo, but he looked pretty good. Dobson, I guess his injury status is kind of debatable, but LaFell has definitely come back together since all the drops against the Jets. So
sure.
Making
big
they're
plays.
not completely out of weapons. I'm still waiting for Scott Chandler to be the guy I wanted him to be. Still waiting.
We keep talking about injuries and week to week about how this team, more than any other team in the NFL, knows how to adapt, and we're all excited about what they're going to bring to the table next, what they're going to serve up next. If they need to run, they can run. If they need to set up big, with 2 tight ends and run the ball, they can do that. If they need to, stretch it out wide and throw it all over the yard, he can do that too. I'm right now a little bit nervous as to what they could possibly come up with. Who do they have left to come up with something that, can move the ball down the field like they're used to doing?
Well, I thought of a fun hypothetical situation for you, and I'll ask you, what do you think they should do, and what do you think Belichick would do in this situation? So, the Patriots just came off their win against the Houston Texans. They're 14-0. The Bengals and the Broncos are both lost more than 3 games. They've clinched home field advantage in the first round bye, and they have the Jets and the Dolphins left. Are they going to go for 0-16, or are they going to sit the players?
I think you keep your foot on the throttle. I don't think that's changed at all. Maybe you don't play everybody. Maybe it's, by committee, a couple here this week, a couple there next week. Those are 2 teams hopefully in that position by the end of the season that you're not very concerned with, obviously, but maybe not matching up well against you. Maybe you don't need all your weapons and you get a little bit of rest in there for some key guys. But I'm not one to ever be of the belief, and I don't think Belichick is, to take your foot off the accelerator for one bit. This is the middle finger tour of 2015 and 16, and nothing would make anybody more proud than a perfect season with a Super Bowl. I think they're keeping Goodell in there long enough to hand the trophy to Brady. With all of these injuries, what they would overcome would just be a monumental story that would last me a lifetime.
I know Bill, he would do it. Bill Belichick would do this. He would keep all the players.
Sure.
He wants, especially
and win
after
45-6.
Especially after all the crap in this offseason, and after how it went down 07, he wants it.
Maybe he would let Brady do what Flutie did.
And you know what?
Drop kick it through.
I wouldn't have too much of a problem with it. I know a lot of people would lose their minds. I would be conservative about Gronk because he's the biggest guy you need. So I wouldn't want him getting too hurt. So I'd be a little careful with him. But we've seen it time and time again in history where the Patriots have clinched this is without an undefeated season line. They've clinched the home field advantage in the bye, but they keep the starters in because they don't want to lose the momentum. And we've seen in the past the Colts with Peyton Manning would do that, where they would they would sit their guys for the last couple weeks of the season. Then once the first round bye happens and they're in the playoffs, they look rusty. They look like they don't know what they're doing. And game speed is the best way to better yourself and keep yourself focused.
There's no doubt about it.
We see it in hockey a lot, where if a team doesn't get their if a team has a week stretch without a game, they look really bad when they come back. The rest hurts them sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that they should let Tom Brady do what Doug Flutie did a few years ago and just drop kick it through the uprights. That's all.
Well,
but good segue. Speaking of Peyton Manning, we all were thinking about could this be the last Brady Manning matchup? This is not even going to happen this time. The question is, does it ever happen again? Is Manning done for good in his career in the National Football League?
I think this is the end of an era, and I mean, it was a spectacular era. I watched every single one. Tom Brady's first game in the NFL was against Peyton Manning as a starter. That's how kind of deep-seated this rivalry is, but I don't blame Kubiak, because after last week, I'd say you'd be crazy not to start Osweiler against the Patriots. Especially with the injury that Manning has, because I saw, if you watch the CBS pregame and stuff, they talked to Dan Fouts, who called the game, the Denver-Chicago game, and he talked about the injury. They all basically said the same thing. There's no speedy way to do this. There's no painkillers, nothing like that. This is time. Time heals this. So, Manning should not come back too early. And Manning is thinking about coming back next year. I think that's a very bad choice. I think I think you're done, Manning. But the other thing is, too, you've had the neck surgeries. Your health is in jeopardy. Your future is in jeopardy. You settled down through your family. You've had a well beyond a Hall of Fame career. If you had half the numbers you'd be in the Hall of Fame. There's nothing else to fight for here. Right.
He just got the last record. So, what else is there to prove? And, it's kind of like watching Brett Favre at the end of his career. You watch the skill set decline to a point where, 0.00. There's nothing to do but improve from that, but there's more to do than that. That's just right off into the sunset. Nobody wants to remember Peyton Manning like this. Not you, not me, and not being fans of him or the Indianapolis Colts or the Denver Broncos. We don't want to see Peyton Manning like this. So our heart goes out to you, Peyton, and our pleas to you are to pack it in, call it a career. He's got a great potential in coaching. Everybody thinks that he could take on a team someday, at least as an offensive coordinator. He probably has a career in the broadcast booth. Why risk injury? He's gone on record saying that his injury was much worse than anticipated, lost feeling in his hand. Not a good injury to come back from, especially if you get banged around in the National Football League. But I think it's the end, too. I got to agree. All done, and we will no more see a Peyton Manning Tom Brady matchup.
Another fun hypothetical for you. He comes back next year, but Denver doesn't want him. They said, we're moving on with Brock. Which team picks him up?
You think the Patriots wanted to back up Brady?
No, no, that's not what I think at all. I don't think that at all. No. My thought, Buffalo. Rex Ryan he probably would be completely blinded to what Manning was last year, and just the thought of having Peyton Manning on his team. I think Rex Ryan would take him.
Weather's going to be a factor there. We talk about it all the time, and I know your deep loathing for dome teams and dome quarterbacks, and this goes about every sense of grain and the fiber in my soul.
Definition of a dome quarterback.
How in the world is he going to go up there in Buffalo where the average temperature is -6, throughout half the season, and perform in that that weather consistently week after week, that's a farce. That's just not going to happen.
Rex Ryan would persuade him.
Not going to. Well, he might, but not for that. All right, we're going to talk about another quarterback in the NFL, and I want to talk a little bit about Johnny Trainwreck before we get into our picks and a little bit more about Week 11 in the NFL. This poor guy has had chance after chance. He was blessed and gifted with an unbelievable talent that he is pretty much packaged up and tossed into the dumpster at this point. He was caught on video partying this past weekend in Texas on their bye week. He has now been removed as a starter and announced that he is demoted to third string. What do you think about the future and the career of Johnny Manziel?
Done in Cleveland, but a stupid team would still take him. A stupid team would still take him, but I thought he was overrated coming out of the draft. I thought he was a complete tool. The second he went on the draft stage, I wanted him out. I was like, I hope you go the way of Tim Tebow and you just have a horrible career. And I said not even that, because Tim Tebow was at least a nice guy.
At least he was a humble guy. Yeah.
I hope you have a worse career than him and then somehow blow all your money on something stupid.
Well, he's pretty much
that's what I think he deserves.
He's in the middle of that as we speak.
But I think he's an overrated talent. I mean, as a Doug Flutie fan, I think I'm saying, too short might be a little... I feel a little bit of a hypocrite for saying he's too short, but you can see when he's back there, his height is becoming a problem. And with Flutie managed to find a way to go around it and make advantage of his height. His height's just not there.
It's a different game. I mean, to be, we're all Flutie fans here, especially being from this area, but I don't think in this league today that somebody of Doug Flutie's stature could survive in the NFL and stay healthy.
He can't even see past his own offensive line, let alone defensive line looking for reads. So that's already a big problem. But the maturity level, it's simply not there. And I don't know how many chances a guy can get.
He was quoted as saying today that Johnny Trainwreck is no longer going to be playing, and again, it needs to be more than the position. He has to take a position that no one is going to go and outwork you. And that was a quote from the Cleveland head coach. How many teams right now are sitting there just wishing for Tom Brady? Because nobody works harder than Tom Brady on this position, this team, or anybody in the NFL. I think we should all stop and pause for a second and realize the value of somebody that works as hard as Tom Brady.
Well, I think better than that, you think Tom Brady's a 6th-round draft pick, and this is such a Cleveland Browns thing, where this is a 1st-round draft pick that you've wasted.
Another one.
Already wasted one on Colt McCoy, Brady Quinn, and Brandon Weeden. And now you have, that's four quarterbacks that you've drafted in the 1st round, and none of them panned out. And this could be the worst of their poor quarterback. And it's just, this is the thing that bothers me about him. It's just he doesn't learn. He's had these opportunities. He's been benched before, and I thought it would get in his head after after last year. He came in and he assumed that he was going to be the big guy on campus. He was going to the hot shot, because that's what his whole life has been.
Johnny football, baby.
His whole life has been everybody kissing his ass. But when he gets there, Brian Hoyer starts over him. And I mean, we as Patriot fans know Brian Hoyer very well,
Sure.
but if you're from any of the 30 other markets that aren't Cleveland or New England, you had no idea who Brian Hoyer was.
That's right.
So Johnny Manziel being 2nd string to Brian Hoyer must have been pretty personal for him. But then, they told him about the attitude and all that other stuff, and then he went partying with Josh Gordon. They said, no, you're not mature enough. We're going to bench you. Then he had the incident with his girlfriend. And they said, no, we're moving you down again. And you'd think there'd be a point where he would say to himself, all right, I need to cut the crap. It's time to be an adult. College is over. But it just doesn't get in his head. And you can't teach it to this guy at this point.
No. And if you look at success in the NFL, there's no better example than Tom Brady, and Tom Brady ain't no bar. I can tell you that much. All right, let's take a quick look around the NFL in Week 11 and go over some of the surprises in some of those games that we picked. Ravens over the Rams. We kind of differed on that one. And I think we both picked the Ravens.
No, we both picked the Ravens.
Both picked the Ravens on that one. What is happening to the St. Louis Rams? They came out as a contender in that division, if not, a playoff spot. They look horrible more and more, and the quarterback position there is just out of control.
Well, let's take a moment to address the elephant in the room, which was the Case Keenum head injury that was not... Why in the world was he back on the field?
No.
Because, I've seen some question. Julian Edelman in the Super Bowl was one that everybody kind of talks about, where he got hit in the head, and people said maybe he should come out for the concussion protocol. But when he came back in, he looked fine. He didn't even look like the head injury affected him. But Case Keenum in that game couldn't stand up for like 5 minutes after he got nailed in the head. He looked like he was drunk. That was how bad the head injury was. There's no reason he should be out in the game, especially because you see that documentary with Will Smith coming out, the concussion movie that just came out. You'd think that maybe the pressure would be on the NFL to make sure this doesn't happen, but I guess head injuries and ball pressure are really not in the same plane of importance. So,
well, they should be, and there is specific protocol in place in the NFL for concussions. In football in general, there is more and more focus on it year after year. We talk about it right down to high school sports and even into Pop Warner and kids sports. Helmets are more padded these days. There is a hell of a lot more attention to safety and protocol for concussions, especially after, let's call it the generation before was coming out with all of these long-term injuries, i.e. Junior Seau, i.e. Teddy Johnson from the New England Patriots. So, it's inexplicable and inexcusable that in this day and age, with all of that we've learned and all the protocol in place, that happened in today's game. It's almost as, I should say, it's even more of an abomination than the inadvertent whistle. There's two things in this week that we're watching the NFL go light years in reverse with, and that's something that really, really should concern all of us. But speaking of concern, we do want to jump in with some breaking news regarding Rams wide receiver Stedman Bailey, who was shot and is stable after being shot in the head this past 24 hours. He was he was in the car with his family when a car drove up alongside and opened fire. He was hit a couple of times. It looks like he's going to make it, but wow, you never know.
That's a 5% chance of survival when you get shot in the head. He's a very, very lucky man, and thoughts go out to him. More
Indeed.
from that Ravens game, though. Bad news for Ravens fans. Joe Flacco is out for the season. Good news, the season was already over. But,
yeah, geez.
But all three Ravens wins coming off last-minute field goals and an overtime field goal. So it's been a pretty inconsistent team all year. Their future is screwed. They have none.
Really, and with Joe Flacco and Steven and Smith gone, who is left on that offense, to pick up the pieces? That is going to be a dismal rebuilding period in Baltimore for sure. The Broncos survive the Bears. Very, very tight game right till the end there. Thought the Bears were going to come back in that one, came up a little bit short.
Osweiler was not a superstar, but he looked good. But I was screaming at my TV when they went for it on fourth down. The Bears did with 10 left. You had not been able to move the ball all game. Take the points.
And what about the play call?
That was.
You hand the ball to a rookie.
And Joe on the fourth down play, Cutler couldn't even see his guy wide open the other end of the field. It was just, oh my God, it was all, John Fox playing against his old team. It got in his head, but Osweiler looked better than Manning.
I'm impressed.
I'm impressed for a kid his age.
He managed the offense. He's got an absolute gun of an arm. In his stature at 6'8", obviously can see the field very well. He's going to be a tough guy to bring down like Big Ben. He's mobile in the pocket. He can move outside and make plays. He managed the game well. They didn't ask him to do a lot, but again, way, way better than Peyton Manning. So if we were talking about the Denver Broncos before, with them winning in spite of Peyton Manning, now they don't have that in front of them as an obstacle. I think the Denver Broncos just got a whole lot better.
He's got a defense behind him, too. That's, I think, the biggest thing.
Absolutely. All right, and Tony Romo returns for the Dallas Cowboys, picks up a big win there, and we talked about this one. A very desperate Cowboys team. It's now or never for them. They really have to almost run the table with Tony Romo back behind center.
I don't think they have a shot. And as we're recording it, it's before Thanksgiving, so I don't even know how they're going to do against the Panthers tomorrow, or how they did yesterday, I should say. But even if they had completely won out, even if they had the maximum record they could have had, which I think would be 9-7, I believe. No, I don't think that team's going to make the playoffs. It's too much of a stretch for me.
Too little, too late.
Too little, too late. But they definitely needed him. And then Miami, I don't know what's happening with him. I think I made the biggest ass of myself picking them in the playoffs this year. But
We both did.
Hindsight's 2020.
Well, one team that is going to make the playoffs and rolling right along are the 10-0 Carolina Panthers. Are for real.
Who would have thought? I mean, if you said the Patriots and one other team were going to be 10-0, I would have said the Packers or maybe Denver. Or I don't know who I would have picked, but Carolina would not be on that list.
They wouldn't have been in the top 5. But, Cam Newton is having an out-of-body experience. The thing is with him, we always wonder, he plays such a physical role in that position. How long can his body take it before he comes up injured? I mean, he's just a beast, though. He runs over people. It doesn't even seem to be a concern for him. He just takes that position to an entirely different level.
I know. I'm very impressed with his maturity. And as I've said before, he's got nobody to throw to, and yet he's making these plays.
Yeah.
Nobody except for Greg Olsen, and he's making the plays. So very good season going for them, but I feel like they will get knocked off at some point if they haven't been on Thanksgiving. I don't know.
We'll see. We'll see defensively. We'll see defensively how they hold up. Texans and Jets, we both picked wrong on that one. The Texans have pulled off a couple of wins in a row. What do you think? Their defense has been very, very stingy. Only a couple of touchdowns in I want to say 8 or 9 quarters.
I'll tell you what, Andrew Luck out and Texans trending upward. I think the Texans could win that division. I mean, they'll win it being like 7-8-1, but
yeah. Speaking of Andrew Luck in the Indianapolis Colts, the luckless Colts pulled off the win against the Falcons, where we went in opposite directions on that one. Matt Hasselbeck still has it.
I think Matt Hasselbeck's been decent, but that win told me more about Atlanta. Atlanta just collapsed. They had that game in their pocket, and they collapsed. And that's why I love Matt Hasselbeck. I'm a big Matt Hasselbeck fan. He's going to be in our Super Bowl rematch break, by the way. But
is there any Elizabeth Hasselbeck appearances, by the way?
I'm sorry.
We talked about that
I couldn't do that.
Too.
Couldn't do that.
All right.
But no, with Matt Hasselbeck, I mean, the teams they beat were Houston, and he came right off the illness, which I thought was impressive. And then it took Jacksonville missing several game-winning field goals to put that game away. So I'm not as impressed as some people might think. I think he's had a lot of luck with the teams they've been playing, but Atlanta, what happened?
Atlanta is absolutely imploding, not only on offense but on defense. And I'll tell you who is also imploding, and I keep picking them, but I'm not picking them anymore. I thought they would play a lot better, the San Diego Chargers. They were putting up 500-yard games from Phillip Rivers, and they were still only had 2 wins. They can't expect to do anything only putting 3 points up on the board against the Chiefs.
Well, at the beginning of the year, I said the Dolphins and the Chiefs would make the playoffs, and it looked like I was going to be really, really wrong on both of those, but the Chiefs are giving me hope that I have a shot at being right. They've been playing out of their mind, and I'm especially impressed because they don't have Jamal Charles, but Alex Smith has been really awesome. He's been, his interceptions almost non-existent. I can't remember if he threw one this weekend, but huge streak without interceptions either way. And West, their replacement running back, is looking just as awesome as Jamal Charles.
Well, it's they have a good coach in Andy Reid, and they always have a pretty decent defense. So they seem to be on a little bit of a roll, and probably one of the hottest teams as of late. Cardinals and Bengals, no surprise there. We both picked the Cardinals. Bengals, again, we talk about it every single week. I don't think as these games now have more playoff implications to them, when teams need to step up and hit that next gear and play at that next level, the Bengals have never been able to do that.
And here the Bengals are playing against a team that will likely get a first-round bye in their conference, the Arizona Cardinals, and they just couldn't do it. And
they should have matched up well against this
Patrick
team.
Peterson shut down A.J. Green. It was just it was a one-sided affair in that regard. But still, they put up a fight, but in the end, their defense just completely slept on the last drive that let Arizona take the lead.
Arizona could possibly be in the Super Bowl, and speaking of Super Bowl, it is time to hit our Super Bowl rematch.
Yep, this week is going to be Pittsburgh at Seattle, which means it's a rematch of Super Bowl 40. Infamous to Seahawks fans for some of the questionable calls, but famous for Steelers fans for the end of Jerome Bettis' career and their 5th Super Bowl that broke a big drought. The dynasty era had been long past them, but Bill Cowher finally managed to bring them to the promised land on that.
All right.
So
On the other side of the break, we're going to take a look at our picks for Week 12.
And Jeff is proud of them this time.
Let's hope so.
All right,
The
we'll
National
be right
Football League is going gold for its 2015 season. This is to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the largest game in American sports, the Super Bowl. Coincidentally, there will be 19 Super Bowl rematches throughout the 2015 regular season. We here at LATV and at Sports Talk wish to celebrate the Super Bowl's epic milestone. So, each week, if there is a Super Bowl rematch happening that weekend, we will give you a quick 1-minute recap of that game in all its glory. This week features the Steelers and the Seahawks in a rematch of Super Bowl 40. Steelers fans will always remember Super Bowl 40 as the final game and homecoming for future Hall of Famer and Detroit native Jerome Bettis. Seahawks fans will remember it for questionable calls.
Number 82.
While Seahawks fans argue questionable calls, there was no debate over the MVP performance of Hines Ward. The wide receiver caught over 120 yards, including this 37-yard strike at the end of the first half. It set up a controversial touchdown run by Ben Roethlisberger, which gave the Steelers the lead. The Seahawks tried to answer back, but failed to come up with additional points at the end of the first half, including a missed field goal. The Seahawks' woes continued into the second half, when Willie Parker broke free for a Super Bowl record 75-yard touchdown run, beating the previous record held by Marcus Allen and giving the Steelers a 14-3 lead. Things seemed desperate for the Seahawks after another missed field goal, but late in the third quarter they got a miracle when Ben Roethlisberger threw an interception, which set up a Matt Hasselbeck touchdown to Jeremy Stevens, cutting the deficit down to 4. The Seahawks tried to make a comeback in the fourth quarter. However, much like the dynasty team of the 1970s, the Steelers dominated on defense. They made plays all game, but Ike Taylor's fourth quarter interception was the biggest one of all. It set up a trick play of wide receiver Antoine Randall throwing a touchdown pass to MVP Hines Ward, capping off the Steelers' first Super Bowl title in almost 30 years.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Sports Talk. It is time to get on to NFL Week 12 and our picks for this week. Let's start with the Panthers and Cowboys, the 4:30 game.
Oh, Thanksgiving? Well, are we going to cover the Thursday games?
Yeah, we might as well.
All right, so I'm gonna look like a fool when I get all of them wrong. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna go out on a limb. I'm gonna say Dallas upsets and gives Carolina their first loss of the year.
You're going to take the Cowboys, huh? All right, I'm going to go with the Carolina Panthers, even though the Cowboys are at home. I think Tony Romo comes back down to earth this week, and I think the Panthers take that one. So, all right, we might as well do the other game too, which is the Eagles and Lions in Detroit.
I'm going to go with the Detroit Lions on this one. Philadelphia's on free fall.
One thing I learned, regardless, Philadelphia could be the best team in the NFC for all I care. You never bet against the Lions on Thanksgiving Day. Are you writing these down, by the way?
I can't.
All right. Bears and Packers, the 8:30 game, because we have all kinds of football on Thanksgiving.
I'm going to go Pack on the day of Brett Favre's number retirement. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Bears and Lambeau either way, but that place is going to be rocking when Brett Favre takes the field at halftime, and there's going to be no stopping the momentum of the Packers at that point.
Well, I think that the Packers are tough at home. They continue to be tough at home except for one slip-up, I believe, this season. So I still like the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. I'm going to take the Pack as well. Let's go on to Sunday's games. We'll start with the Bills and Chiefs in Kansas City.
I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs in a big, big game. They're both 5-5 fighting for a wild card spot right now, but I like the way the Chiefs have been treading. Bills have been a little bit inconsistent, and with Tyrod Taylor's shoulder, I don't know how they're going to be. I'm going to go with Kansas City.
Got to agree with you for the same reasons. The health of Tyrod Taylor is definitely going to come into play, and this might as well be a playoff game because I think the team that does not survive this does not make it to the playoffs. Rams and Bengals in Cincinnati.
Well, good news, Cincinnati. It's not a primetime game, so you're going to win.
And they're at home. The Rams can't get anything right on offense. Quarterback situation very much there in question. I like the Bengals at home as well, non-prime time. You nailed that one as well. Saints and Texans in Houston. I'm going to go with the Houston Texans. I think the Texans are on a roll. The Saints come into town. Probably if they were playing in New Orleans, I might be more apt to pick the Saints. I don't think on the road they fare as well. Texans are playing great on defense. I'm going with Houston.
I cannot predict the Saints at all this season, but I'm going to predict them this week because it's going to be in a dome for starters, so that's going to help them out. And they're coming off a bye week, so they're going to have some time to prepare for whatever the Texans have. But the Saints are a better team. I just don't understand why they haven't been showing it this year. So I'm going to do New Orleans.
All right. Buccaneers and Colts. I'm going to take the Bucs in this one, even though they're on the road against the Matt Hasselbeck and the Indianapolis Colts.
I, too, will go Tampa Bay just because, as I said before, I think Tampa Bay has been trending up. I've liked the direction they're coming. And I don't want to go too off topic. We don't have a ton of time. But Jameis Winston was such a clown in college. I thought he was just going to crash and burn. I was hoping he'd crash and burn, but he showed me what Johnny Manziel has not, what he could have been. And I give Jameis Winston credit for that. He has matured immensely because he understood what was important in his life ever since he got drafted. So I like Tampa Bay's direction. Indianapolis, I just can't trust them to win a game.
I got to agree with you on both fronts there. Buccaneers are putting up a ton of points. I don't think the Colts, even at home, can hang with that offense. I'm going Tampa Bay as well. Jets and Dolphins, both teams headed in the wrong direction. We thought, at the beginning of the year, we talked about the AFC East and how, minus, taking the Patriots out of the equation, how competitive it would be. We thought we'd see better records, and they all started out very, very well. We thought that they were the creme de la creme.
They're all equally average and mediocre.
And proving to be at least, that, if not worse. Dolphins are in a horrible direction right now. The Jets are right behind them. There's again, big questions at quarterback there. Who do you like in that game?
This is tough. I'm going to go Miami. Don't even ask me why I'm going. This is just out of my gut because I really can't think of a reason why either of these teams should win.
All right. I'm going to take the New York Jets at home. I think their abuse has probably got them a little fired up. If Ryan Fitzpatrick can have half a decent game at home and if he can stay healthy, I definitely like the Jets over the Dolphins. Vikings and Falcons, we thought this would be a tough pick at the beginning of the year. This is now a very easy pick, I'm sure, for both of us. I'm taking the Minnesota Vikings. Falcons definitely going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, as am I. I mean, as I talked earlier about the Falcons, but Minnesota, even though they lost to Green Bay, they showed that they do belong in the playoffs. At the end of that game, they had heart. They stuck through the end, and they definitely did not make it easy for the Packers. Atlanta, on the other hand, could make any game easy for anybody. So,
Minnesota's been in every game.
You know what my favorite thing about watching them is? Teddy Bridgewater does this thing where he doesn't step into the throw, but he has such a strong arm, it looks like he did, and it looks like a magic trick. It's just him standing there and going like that, and it's just a bullet.
It almost looks like something you'd see on Madden.
He's impressive.
He is. He certainly is. And again, his health is of question, and if they can keep him healthy and upright, is going to be a huge direction in how that team goes, along with Adrian Peterson. Here's a good game for you. The Giants and Redskins in Washington.
Washington has trended up recently. I mean, they had that big hiccup against Carolina, but as is everybody. I'm going to go with Washington in an upset over the New York Giants.
All right, I'm taking the New York Football Giants for the reason that, looking at the standings in that division, again, the Cowboys, if they don't run the table the entire way, they're all done. New York is pretty much in the same position. They've got to get some wins. They really, really need this game, I think, a hell of a lot more.
Yeah, leading that division is not saying much.
But at least they have a playoff spot. I'm going with the New York Giants. All right, we have the 49ers and the Cardinals.
I'm going to go with Arizona on this one. It's hard to pick the 49ers. And is it still Blaine Gabbert? I think it's still Blaine Gabbert.
I couldn't tell you. That's been a train wreck there ever since, preseason.
It's kind of like picking stock. I'm going to pick what's trending up and not down. Arizona is trending way up.
Does Arizona, we're both picking the Cardinals, obviously. How deep do you think the Cardinals go into the playoffs?
NFC title game.
NFC title game against Carolina.
Carolina.
Okay, so you're thinking Arizona, Carolina in the NFC title game.
Yeah.
So the odd man out now is Green Bay.
That's going to be tough. I don't know which team beats Green Bay. Actually, Arizona would have to host Green Bay. I don't know.
The thing that bothers me about the Arizona Cardinals, the way that they've been winning games, let's call it resilience if you want to be on the upside of it. If the glass is half full, you call it resilience. They've been overcoming a lot of obstacles and being able to pull out games. If the glass is only half full, I should say half empty, I don't like the way they've put themselves in those positions. Long drives that have ended on interceptions, points that could have been scored with squandered penalties and turnovers. They should have been a juggernaut. The way they move the ball up and down the field, they've shot themselves in the foot just as many times as they've bailed themselves out this year.
I prefer the way they've been winning because resiliency helps you in the playoffs way more than blowing crap teams out.
Okay, well, we'll see if we're a glass half full or glass half empty on that one. All right, we're going to go Patriots and Broncos are the, I believe. Let's take on the Raiders and Titans. We'll save the Patriots for the end. Raiders and Titans, I'm sorry.
I'm going to go with the Oakland Raiders. I know they've been kind of trending down of recent weeks, but they are a better team talent-wise than Tennessee. I'd expect them to win this one.
I'm taking Tennessee at home as a long shot. That's my wild pick for the week.
It's not a bad pick at this point because Oakland's been kind of inconsistent ever since I started praising them.
And the Titans can run the football. Steelers and Seahawks. I'm taking the Pittsburgh Steelers on the road. I think that I don't know. Nobody's healthy. Nobody's playing well there. That's a crapshoot. I'm still going to take the Steelers.
I'm going to take the Steelers too. Marshawn Lynch is now going to be out for pretty much the rest of the regular season with his with a surgery. That Seahawks has been just unpredictable team. I'm going to go with the Steelers. They've just showed me more. They've shown me that they're better.
And I think they're a deeper team. I think the depth comes into play there, and the Steelers have more depth, certainly, than the Seattle Seahawks at this point in the season. Ravens and Brown, this is kind of a who cares game.
Well, I picked the Ravens. I picked the Browns the last time. This one's going to be at home. No Joe Flacco. I'm going to go Cleveland again. I'm with you on that one. This is the tale of two missing quarterbacks or three missing quarterbacks, or how many missing quarterbacks do you want to toss into this equation? We don't even know who's probably going to be playing quarterback in this one, but I'm still taking the Cleveland Browns. All right. Which should leave our game of the week, Patriots and Broncos. Before I give you my pick, I'm going to talk to you about my concerns. And if they were concerns last week, Erin, they are very deep concerns this week. And I'm going to go straight to the injury bug. We talked about how this team came out like a juggernaut and all the weapons they had and how they could move the ball seemingly at will up and down the field with this offense. And now, if you look at this team, decimated with injuries, not only the options and weapons that Brady has, but my biggest concern, as we talked about earlier, is this offensive line. And I think this game, more than ever, there's not a team that is going to exploit that more than this Denver defense. I totally agree with you on Denver defense doing an incredible job against the Patriots in a very injured offensive line and a lack of wide receivers. However, and I'm usually the pessimist here, I'm optimistic about this game because of the way the defense played last week for the Patriots. And with Brock Osweiler coming off only his first ever start, those are the kinds of games that Bill Belichick licks his chops over because he's not a rookie, but he's first year, whatever you want to say. But rookie quarterbacks, he eats them alive. And so I like the Patriots in this game in a low scoring, similar to last week, 20 to 10 games, something along those lines. I think the defense of the Patriots are going to carry them through this game, and that's going to be one of the only times this year that we've really been able to say the defense has carried them, but I think the defense wins this game for them. I'm still up in the air on my pick, and I'm going to tell you why. It makes a lot of sense, and if you're talking glass half full type situation, I agree with you. If you look at facts,
Bill Belichick has been very, very effective and somewhat dominant against a team that has bolstered a healthy and productive Peyton Manning. Now you bring in Osweiler, who is a quote-unquote, let's call him a rookie quarterback or very inexperienced, and I got to agree with you. Belichick's going to dial up stuff that's going to blow this kid's mind. The question is, which defense is going to execute better on that side of the ball? And I think the Denver Broncos are healthier. I think that they expand the playbook a little bit this week for Osweiler, maybe throw in a few wrinkles. And I think if the Patriots can win this game, I'm picking them for the rest of the season. But I'll tell you, with Amendola questionable, write it down. I'm taking the Denver Broncos.
I'll tell you what, I mean, as much credit as we gave Osweiler last week, they did only come up with 17 points against the Bears. So, I mean, and here's another factor, though, that kind of makes me nervous as a Patriots fan. That building, Tom Brady that's
a house of horrors for him.
It's one of the few places.
That is an absolute house of horrors.
Sports Authority Field at Mile High and the New York Giants. So the only two things I think that have ever concerned Brady in his career. So it's definitely has been a tough building. He's lost 2 playoff games there. It's rough, but I think the difference is the defense is going to help him in this game.
Well, you're talking about defense. I think this is probably, if you want to talk about the cosmos aligning, okay, you look at this Denver defense, and they would probably be looking at a healthy New England Patriots team at this point and saying, what do we do to stop these guys? Now, they've got a blueprint for that. They watched the Bills last week, being able to mix up blitzes, being able to put pressure on Tom Brady, being able to knock him around and get the ball, get him to hold on to the ball longer than he'd like to. They have a recipe now, and a healthy defense. I'm not going to put too much past that if I'm the Denver Broncos.
Oh, it's going to be a tough game to the end. I don't doubt that at all. But as I said, I think our offense is going to struggle, but it's time for some other guys to step up. As I said before, Scott Chandler, this is the week I want to see him step up.
We keep saying his name. We keep calling his number week after week,
I think
but we're not seeing it
if I do it enough, it'll happen.
I thought that about the San Diego Chargers, my friend.
I'm waiting for
going
Chandler
anywhere.
And I'm looking for big games from Harper and LaFell. Maybe not big
Harper
game,
could be a big game guy. He's fast.
To help them take the lead at the end when it's important. I'm going to say I don't think they're going to score an offensive touchdown the first half, the Patriots. I think they're going to have a little bit of difficulty, but once those adjustments come in the second, they'll be able to finally come up with the points that they need.
Maybe Stephen Gostkowski, after losing his NFL record last week of consecutive field goals, maybe he kicks a 67-yarder this week in the thin air up there.
Yeah. I mean,
if anybody can do it, man, you never know. Wouldn't I look like a hero if I predicted that one, huh?
Well,
67-yard field goal.
You looked like a fool last week for predicting the Bills, so...
You know what? They were in that game. They held the Patriots to less points than any other team this year, and they were a couple of plays away from really taking that game into overtime, if not winning that game altogether.
Yep, and I'm already picking against the other 10-0 team, so I probably shouldn't press my luck twice.
If they're going to lose one, this is the one they're going to lose. I think if they win this game, I'm riding them out for the rest of the year. But now this is going to ride out the rest of this show. This has come to the end, and on behalf of my co-host Erin Bolio and the rest of the crew here at Leominster Access Television, we want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Enjoy your holiday weekend.